Have you ever wondered why some men seem to naturally command attention, while others try endlessly yet remain invisible? Why does one man walk into a room and people instinctively notice him, while another, who might even be kinder or more generous, fades quietly into the background? At first glance, it seems unfair. Many people grow up believing that attraction is about being nice, agreeable, and constantly proving your affection. They are taught that the more effort they put into pleasing others, the more appreciation they will receive in return. But life often tells a different story. You may have seen it yourself. The man who constantly seeks approval, who bends his personality just to be liked, who apologizes for every opinion, is often overlooked. Meanwhile, someone else, calm, confident, even slightly distant, seems to draw curiosity without trying. Why does that happen? Why does chasing admiration often lead to disappointment, while quiet confidence seems to attract attention naturally? For centuries, philosophers and observers of human nature have tried to understand this paradox. Among them was Niccolò Machiavelli, a thinker who studied power, influence, and the hidden motivations that guide human behavior. While many people misunderstand his ideas as purely cynical, Machiavelli was actually doing something deeper. He was observing reality without illusions. And one of the uncomfortable truths he recognized was this: human attraction is rarely driven by what people say they want. Instead, it is guided by deeper instincts connected to strength, stability, and emotional security. Today we're going to explore a question that has fascinated thinkers for generations. What is the one thing women truly desire? Not the surface answers that society often repeats. Not the cliches about wealth, charm, or endless compliments. But the deeper psychological quality that consistently draws admiration and respect. And here's the interesting part. This quality is not something you can fake with clever words or rehearsed behavior. It comes from something much deeper, something rooted in how a person lives, thinks, and carries themselves through the world. Stay with me until the end, because once you understand this principle, you will begin to notice it everywhere. The way people interact, the way certain individuals command attention effortlessly, and the reason some relationships thrive while others quietly collapse. Long before modern psychology existed, the Stoic philosophers were already exploring the foundations of human behavior. Marcus Aurelius believed that the strongest individuals are not those who control others, but those who master themselves. Epictetus taught that a person who depends on the approval of others becomes emotionally enslaved by their opinions. And Seneca warned that constantly chasing admiration weakens a person's inner stability. These ideas may seem philosophical at first, but they reveal something extremely practical about attraction. Because people are naturally drawn toward those who appear internally grounded. Someone who is calm within themselves. Someone who does not panic when others disagree. Someone who does not reshape their personality just to be accepted. When a person possesses this inner stability, their presence changes. They move differently. They speak differently. And people begin to notice them, often without understanding exactly why. This brings us to the first insight. Insight 1. Attraction begins with respect. Many people believe attraction is built purely on affection. But affection without respect rarely lasts. Machiavelli observed that people may enjoy kindness, but they are deeply influenced by strength of character. Not aggression, not dominance, but inner strength, the ability to remain composed, principled, and emotionally stable regardless of external pressure. Imagine two individuals. The first constantly seeks validation. They adjust their opinions to match others, laugh nervously to avoid disagreement, and sacrifice their boundaries just to maintain approval. The second person is calm and thoughtful. They listen carefully, speak honestly, and remain comfortable even when others disagree with them. Which one feels more secure? Which one feels more intriguing? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, respect is not built through persuasion. It is built through consistent character. People may admire charm for a moment, but they respect someone who remains steady under pressure. And respect is the foundation where deeper attraction begins to grow. But this raises an important question. If respect is so powerful, why do so many people sacrifice it just to gain temporary attention? Why do they ignore their boundaries, hide their opinions, and reshape themselves simply to be liked? The answer reveals something even deeper about human psychology, something Machiavelli understood very clearly. And it leads us to the second insight, where the real dynamics of admiration and desire begin to unfold. The second insight begins with a truth that many people sense, but few are willing to accept. Human attraction is deeply connected to emotional independence. Not indifference, not coldness, but independence. A person who appears emotionally dependent on others for validation often creates a subtle pressure in relationships. Their happiness seems tied to how others respond to them. They constantly seek reassurance. They worry about every shift in attention. They measure their worth through approval. And although this may come from genuine affection, it often produces the opposite effect of what they hope for. Why? Because people are naturally drawn toward individuals who seem stable within themselves. Someone who can enjoy connection without needing it to feel complete. Machiavelli noticed this pattern while studying human behavior in politics and society. He observed that people instinctively respect those who appear self-contained, individuals whose identity does not depend on constant praise or reassurance. Such people feel difficult to manipulate, difficult to pressure, and therefore, they command a certain level of respect. Now consider the opposite situation. Imagine someone who constantly tries to win approval. They reply instantly to every message. They hesitate to disagree. They overthink every interaction, worrying about whether they said the perfect thing. Instead of creating admiration, this behavior often signals insecurity, not because kindness is wrong, but because neediness weakens presence. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus explained this idea in a powerful way. He taught that the moment you become dependent on another person's opinion for your peace of mind, you hand them control over your emotional state. In other words, the more someone needs approval, the less free they become. Now imagine the opposite mindset. Imagine someone who enjoys conversation, connection, and companionship, but whose happiness does not depend entirely on those things. They have their own direction in life, their own values, their own ambitions. When they speak, they are relaxed rather than anxious. They are curious rather than desperate to impress. This kind of emotional independence changes everything. It creates a sense of balance. Instead of chasing attention, this person becomes someone whose presence feels calm and grounded. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the greatest form of power is control over one's own thoughts and reactions. Because once someone achieves this internal control, they no longer panic over small shifts in external circumstances. They remain steady, and steadiness is something people trust. Think about it carefully. In relationships, instability creates anxiety, but stability creates comfort. When someone appears emotionally centered, others naturally feel safer around them. Conversations become easier. Interactions feel less pressured. Seneca once wrote that a wise person is not someone who avoids relationships, but someone who enters them without losing themselves. This distinction is important. Stoicism never teaches emotional distance for the sake of isolation. Instead, it teaches self-possession, the ability to care about others without surrendering your identity. And when someone lives with this mindset, their presence becomes quietly powerful. They are not constantly proving their worth. They are not begging for attention. They simply live with a sense of internal completeness. Ironically, that internal completeness often attracts more interest than endless attempts to impress. Because in a world where many people chase validation, someone who appears comfortable within themselves becomes rare. But emotional independence alone does not explain everything. There is another psychological factor involved, one that Machiavelli understood particularly well. It has to do with mystery and restraint. When someone reveals everything about themselves immediately, their thoughts, their emotions, their entire personality, curiosity quickly disappears. But when someone reveals themselves gradually, allowing others to discover their character over time, something different happens. Interest grows, curiosity deepens, and that curiosity keeps attraction alive. This leads us directly to the third insight, a principle that explains why restraint, patience, and quiet confidence often leave the strongest impressions. The third insight revolves around something that silently shapes attraction, influence, and human curiosity. Mystery. Not the kind of mystery created through deception or manipulation, but the natural mystery that comes from restraint. In modern conversations, Many people reveal everything about themselves almost immediately. They speak endlessly about their past, their problems, their opinions, and their emotions. At first, this openness may feel refreshing, but over time, something unexpected happens. Curiosity fades. When everything about a person becomes predictable, the mind stops searching for more. There is nothing left to discover. Machiavelli observed this principle not only in relationships, but also in politics and leadership. He noticed that individuals who constantly explained themselves or tried too hard to be understood often weakened their own influence. But those who spoke carefully, revealed themselves gradually, and maintained a sense of composure often created a stronger presence. Why? Because curiosity is a powerful psychological force. When people sense that there is more to discover about someone, more depth, more perspective, more character, they naturally become interested. Think about a conversation with someone who shares every detail about themselves within the first few minutes. Their childhood stories, their personal struggles, their entire life philosophy. At first it may seem engaging, but after a short time, the interaction becomes predictable. Now imagine someone different. They listen carefully. They speak thoughtfully. They reveal pieces of themselves slowly, allowing the conversation to unfold naturally. Suddenly the interaction feels different. You become curious. You want to know more about how they think. You wonder what experiences shape them. And that curiosity keeps the conversation alive. The Stoic philosophers understood the value of restraint in speech. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself not to speak unnecessarily. He believed that words should be used carefully and only when they add real value to a conversation. He wrote that a wise person should focus more on living well than on constantly explaining themselves, because character eventually reveals itself through actions, not endless words. Seneca also warned that people who speak too quickly or too frequently often weaken the impact of their own voice. A person who talks constantly becomes predictable, but someone who speaks thoughtfully creates anticipation. When they finally say something meaningful, others listen more closely. This kind of restraint naturally creates a sense of quiet confidence. It signals that a person is comfortable with silence, comfortable with patience, comfortable with allowing relationships and conversations to develop naturally instead of forcing them forward. And this calm patience often leaves a far stronger impression than constant attempts to impress. But mystery alone is not enough. Someone can appear reserved or quiet, yet still fail to inspire admiration. Why? Because the final and most important principle goes beyond conversation entirely. It has nothing to do with clever words, mysterious behavior, or carefully controlled interactions. It has everything to do with how a person lives their life. Machiavelli believed that people instinctively respect individuals who are guided by a clear sense of purpose. Someone who wakes up each day focused on building something meaningful. Someone whose attention is not entirely consumed by chasing approval or attention. Because when a person is deeply committed to their path in life, they stop orbiting around other people's expectations. Instead, they begin walking their own direction. And strangely enough, that is when others start paying attention the most. This final principle reveals the deeper truth behind admiration, attraction, and respect. And once you understand it, everything we've discussed, respect, independence, and mystery, begins to make complete sense. The final insight brings everything together, because while respect, emotional independence, and mystery all play a role in attraction, none of them truly stand alone. They all point toward one deeper principle: purpose. Machiavelli understood something about human nature that many people overlook. People are instinctively drawn toward individuals who appear to be moving toward something meaningful. Someone who has direction. Someone who wakes up each day with discipline, goals, and a clear sense of who they are becoming. Not someone who spends their entire life chasing admiration, but someone who is busy building themselves. This is the quiet force that changes how people are perceived. When a person is focused on growth, improving their mind, strengthening their habits, pursuing meaningful work, their attention shifts away from constantly seeking approval. They no longer revolve around other people's opinions. And that shift creates something powerful: presence. Marcus Aurelius lived by this principle even while ruling the Roman Empire. Despite his power, he constantly reminded himself that his true duty was not to impress others, but to cultivate character. He wrote, Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. These words reveal the essence of Stoic philosophy. True strength is not about appearing impressive. It is about becoming someone whose character speaks for itself. When someone lives this way, their confidence becomes quiet but unmistakable. They are not desperate for attention. They are not anxious about every interaction. And they are not constantly adjusting themselves just to fit in. Instead, they remain steady. Seneca once explained that the most admirable individuals are those who remain aligned with their values even when the world around them pressures them to compromise. Because integrity creates stability, and stability creates trust. Think about the people who leave the deepest impressions in life. They are rarely the loudest voices in the room. They are rarely the ones trying the hardest to be liked. More often, they are individuals who carry themselves with calm discipline and quiet certainty. They speak carefully, they listen patiently, and they remain focused on their path regardless of external distractions. This is why the question we began with, what is the one thing women truly want, often leads to so many misunderstandings. People expect the answer to be something external, charm, money, status, or perfect words. But those things only capture attention temporarily. What truly commands lasting admiration is strength of character. A person who respects themselves. A person who stands by their values. A person who continues growing even when no one is watching. Because that kind of strength signals something rare. Reliability, emotional stability, inner discipline. And in a world filled with uncertainty, those qualities become incredibly attractive. So the real lesson here is not about learning tricks or memorizing clever phrases. It is about building a life that you respect. Strengthen your mind, discipline your habits, protect your integrity, and focus on meaningful goals. When you do that, something interesting happens. You stop trying to prove your value, and people begin to recognize it naturally. If this message helped you see human nature from a deeper perspective, take a moment to subscribe to Quiet Stoic. On this channel, we explore the timeless wisdom of Stoic philosophy and the psychological principles that help build inner strength, clarity, and discipline in a chaotic world. And if this video made you reflect in a new way, leave a like so more people searching for deeper understanding can discover it as well. Before you go, write this in the comments. Character creates respect. It's a reminder not only to me that you stayed until the end, but also to yourself that real influence is built through patience, discipline, and self-mastery. And while you're here, choose one of the videos appearing on the screen, because sometimes a single idea, discovered at the right moment, can quietly transform the direction of your life. Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay disciplined, and most importantly, stay stoic.